Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Now that my two obligatory informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And I've come across a big beef between Vegan Gains, aka Virgin Gains, aka Richard the Sociopath, and Frankie Tufano. I just covered their debate the other day, and like I said, I wasn't really impressed by either one. I obviously tend to lean more in the direction of Frankie's viewpoint on diet, but I don't necessarily agree with everything that he says or the way he presents it. But obviously, if I had to pick between the two, I'm going to lean in his direction because I'm really, really big on meat-heavy diets, right? I eat primarily meat. That's where I get most of my calories. And I obviously am philosophically opposed to veganism, but that doesn't mean that everything Richard says is wrong, and people need to understand that. But apparently, there's threats of a lawsuit between the two of these guys. So let me put on my +5 hat of speechcraft, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And by the way, guys, no, I don't give up my weaponsmithing. I'm still big into my weaponsmithing, just not doing it on camera all the time. So, back to the point. These two guys are having a beef, and apparently Frankie tried to start a Kickstarter. And, he didn't actually do the best job possible. I looked at it, I went to check it out, looked to see what he had. And I mean, it was okay, but he made some mistakes with it. And I'm going to have to agree with Richard on that. When it comes to this whole situation, Richard basically said that, look, Frankie tried to do a Kickstarter and asked for a lot of money, and he really didn't detail it as well as he could have. In other words, it seemed like there was a lot of info there, and there's a lot of material there, but if you were to look at it, you really can't see specifically what his business model is, how he's going to source everything. It is the sort of thing that would raise red flags with Kickstarter. And that is the truth of the matter. That really is a problem. Like, he didn't do it correctly. And it's not to say he can't come back and retry it again later and do it better. And be more specific, in which case that's probably what he needs to do to get a business model going. And here's the thing. Richard jumped up and was really belligerent about it, but we expect that. We expect Virgin Gains to be belligerent when it comes to a lot of this stuff. But was he right when he said that Frankie didn't actually do the Kickstarter correctly and that they shut it down, it looks like, for legitimate reasons? I don't even like Richard. I don't like his philosophy, but I'm going to have to agree with him on that one. When you're right, you're right. All right, let's be honest here. When you are right, you are right. Someone could be wrong, or they could be a dislikeful person, or someone that you just can't stand. But when they say something that's correct, as a correct observation, we have to be objective enough to say, you know what? He actually got it right. He is right. I don't think it's necessarily because of Richard that his Kickstarter got shut down. Right? I don't think it's necessarily because of Richard. And I'll get over to the whole thing with defamation in a minute. But the other thing that I thought was a little bit ridiculous was the way that Richard, he was so spiteful about it. He's like, well, you just want to start things that are about animal cruelty, and I hope every business that you try to start gets shut down. That's just spiteful and hateful, Richard. That's just spiteful and hateful. And you know what? Free-range animals, that's not cruel to animals. That's not torturing animals. You know what? Grass-fed animals have fantastic lives. They have happy lives. They're happy cows. You know what? Because I've worked on a grass-fed ranch. My family were grass-fed ranchers. And I'll probably eventually get into ranching again myself. But the point is, they're happy cows right up until the moment where and they don't really see it coming. So they're happy right up until that split second. They have pretty good lives. Man, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good way to go if you're going to be a cow. Nice big open grass field, chewing on grass, being happy, safe from predators, oftentimes get to live most of the cows are living a nice long life. It's mostly the steers that you're eating, right? The cows are fine. The poor steers, they're not having a good time of it always, but you know what? They taste good. They're delicious. Grass-fed steer. Good stuff right there. High in omega-3s. Quality meat. And they're happy cows for the most part. So, he's just being silly with some of that. He needs to get over it. Get over yourself, Richard. But I will say, though, that if Frankie were to put together a good business model where he is really sourcing his grass-fed meat and stuff, that would actually be okay. That would be fine. I mean, hell, if I ever get back into raising grass-fed animals, I'd consider doing some business with him on that. I'd look into it because I do believe in that sort of stuff. I actually am a big believer in grass-fed meat. My own personal view. That's my perspective on it. Take it or leave it. If people don't like that, I really don't care. I don't care. Nobody cares what you think. I didn't ask you shit. So, over to the point. They're talking about lawsuits and defamation. Well, he's claiming that Richard's trolls has something to do with it, and Richard kind of said, well, my trolls have better things to do with their time. No, they don't, Richard. All right, that's where you're wrong. That's why I'm going to disagree with Richard. When you say that trolls wouldn't do that or waste their time doing that, bullshit. We all know better than that. I've seen firsthand and watched how dedicated trolls will be when they decide that they don't like somebody, or they follow you and they're militant vegans and they decide they don't like him, or whatever someone decides is their arch nemesis based upon their philosophy. Autistic loser trolls will dedicate their entire lives to doing that. So you can't tell me some of your followers probably really didn't go make 37 accounts each to report him and send 37 individual emails and reports. And you can't tell me they didn't, because that is how trolls operate, right? That is how they operate. So I'm not buying for 1 minute that that's not what happened. But back to the other point, so I think you're wrong there that your fans didn't do. I'm sure they did. But we'll get over to the point. Would they have shut it down if they didn't see some legit red flags and some problems with it? They probably wouldn't have. So even then, even if they did do that, I think you're wrong saying they didn't. Kickstarter did look at that and say, okay, this needs to be better defined before we're going to allow this. So I get it. And I would advise Frankie to go through, try again, write it out better, show kind of how you're going to source stuff, a better idea of your business model, and in a way that's appropriate, and I would say give it another go, and it'll probably be okay. It'll probably be okay. So as far as the lawsuit thing and defamation, this is where it gets interesting. Out of all the people here on YouTube, I feel that I'm one of the more qualified to speak on what it's like to be involved with defamation proceedings, because I have actually been sued for defamation. I have been actually sued for defamation, not a cease and desist letter. I had someone spend over $100,000 out of their own pocket suing me, right? When I was in a foreign country that didn't have the same freedom of speech laws we have in the United States, okay? They did not have the same freedom of speech laws. Someone spent six figures out of their own pocket to sue me. I've been through this process. I currently, where I live now, have a defamation attorney ready to help me out in case things become a problem again. So I have a defamation attorney. I've had to familiarize myself with my local defamation laws quite a bit. I've sat in an office talking with this attorney for 4 hours before. 4 hours straight discussing the ins and outs of this with someone who is a specialist in this field. So my experience of defamation, I'm going to say just because someone defames you doesn't mean that you automatically sue. We're talking about a lot of money. People who only make 50 grand or 80 grand a year really don't have any business getting involved in real defamation suits, because I don't think people understand how expensive this stuff gets, and you may not collect on it. In other words, when you're talking about defamation, you might go through the whole process and someone may have defamed you, because you know what? I can think of right now off the top of my head, if I were to look at the letter of the law, at least 6 or 7 YouTubers who have defamed me, like under the actual definition of defamation. I mean, Jerry Ward has defamed me. Like literally under the letter of the law. There have been actual news outlets that have defamed me on multiple counts, not just 1 or 2 things, that are actually technically defamation under the letter of the law. The amount of hassle and the money that it takes to sue somebody for defamation is enormous. The time investment and the money investment is enormous, and they may not have it to get back. In other words, even if Frankie were to say, okay, I've got $100,000 sitting here ready to sue Vegan Games. So I've got the money, I'm going to pay this whole process through. The odds that you're going to get any of your money back is pretty slim. Like, you might win and they might force Richard to pull whatever statements he said and issue an apology under whatever threat of penalty, and they might slap him with whatever amount of fine and even say he has to pay your legal fees, and you might have spent $100,000. Richard doesn't have $100,000 to pay. And as far as I know, he might even live with his mom still, in which case he doesn't own property. He doesn't have major assets that you can seize. You're essentially going to lose that money. You're just going to spend that money and lose it and not get it back. And if you get that sort of money sitting around ready to just throw away and wipe your ass with, you have the money to go ahead and just start your own business. So you see the problem here? This is a problem. Neither one of these guys really have the sort of resources to be involved in a defamation suit. Like in my case, the way things were set up was, again, people don't know what really happened. They think they know what happened with mine, but they weren't part of it. They didn't see. They don't know what strategies I used. They really don't know what happened. It's all hearsay. But let me put it very, very clearly. I anticipated that I was going to be sued and that I would not have the legal or the financial means to actually defend against a real defamation suit where someone was willing to spend over $100,000. My strategy when I got sued was to run his bill up as high as possible so that and not pay any of it. Like, I already had a strategy and a plan in place, and it planned months ahead of time as it was developing to make sure that I had no assets that could be collected. I made sure everything that I had was a protected asset. And that if he was successful, I wouldn't pay anything. And so this individual technically won a defamation suit, right? He won. In fact, the videos that he was suing me over, I pulled them in a good faith effort to look better for the court before it ever went to court. I pulled all of it on my own, so he didn't get the win because it was already down. So he spent all that extra money to make me take down videos that I had taken down months before already voluntarily. He spent over $100,000 to get a piece of paper that says you win, and I didn't pay a single penny. They never actually issued me a fine. I told them, this is what I'm going to do. These are what assets I have that you're legally allowed to collect from your government. This is what's protected by my U.S. Embassy. This is what's protected under other names that I am not required by law to give you the names of who is the ownership of these different assets because they're not citizens of your country. I basically protected everything of mine. I protected everything of mine. And at that time, even my YouTube channel wasn't even legally under my name. I put it under another legal entity's name that was not based out of the country in which he sued me. Therefore, he had nothing he could collect. And that's the problem that defamation attorney pointed out here later, my one in Texas, is the same strategy I used big corporations sometimes use. So a news agency that has multiple subsidiaries, you might sue them and win an award, but they have enough resources that they can shuffle the coconuts enough to get out of paying you the full fee of what they get fined. So you end up spending $100,000 and they end up paying you like 20 grand out of the 100,000 that you wasted on a pure win, like where you slammed them in court. So that's the problem you run into. You can sue people for defamation, but you're really talking big money. Like, if you're not a millionaire, suing people for defamation is stupid. If you're suing for someone for defamation other than just out of spite, who doesn't have large sums of money, they're not a millionaire, you're also stupid unless you just want to throw away money based upon your own ego, which is like what happened in my case. That person is such an egotistical narcissist that they basically lost over $100,000 that they never got a return on purely to satisfy their ego. Right? That's what we're dealing with. Most defamation suits, it's just about ego. That's what it comes down to. Very rarely, unless you're very smart about it and you strategize, is it actually going to be profitable. The lawyers are going to make money, right? It's not guaranteed that you're going to make money. So really, it's just all about getting a piece of paper that says I win. That's what most defamation suits at the end of the day end up being. If unless you're very careful about it and you strategize carefully, and I don't think either one of these guys are in a situation to do that. Looking at what's happening here, all that's going to happen is Frankie's going to lose a lot of money. So I'm going to tend to agree with Richard here. But what I will say to Richard, if Frankie is actually independently wealthy and really has enough ego about it and he's willing to just wipe his ass with $100,000 and really pursue it because he doesn't like you, you are going to be in a bit of a problem. You're going to be in a bit of a bind because you don't have the financial means to defend against it, and you might end up losing a few $1,000s. You might end up losing 10 grand out of the whole thing. You very well could. It's going to cost him $100,000 to get your $10,000, but he might be able to pull it off. So just something for Richard to think about, just based on my own personal experience and the way these things go. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.